What were some of the stuff you worked on?
Yes, I think the big thing with medical device development in general, it's all risk-based. It's obviously safety and efficacy are the two most important things for medical devices. On the safety side, that's where security really comes in.
You are now listening to the Secure AF Podcast.
Welcome to the Secure AF Podcast. We've got another great episode today where we're introducing DR Labs, and we'll explain what that means later. And I've got Garrett here with me, and we're going to have a fun time talking about what he does and kind of what we have planned for our new sister company, our new, I guess it's a couple of different things that we've talked about, but it's a new group here at Alias, or powered by Alias, and we're really excited. So Garrett, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We're excited to be building out this new company here with you guys, and Vice Recon Labs has lots of fun stuff coming up. So
yeah, it's when they first told me about it, I mean, this was months and months ago when we started talking about this, I got really excited. Number one, because I know you guys, or I heard of you guys, but just the cool stuff that you guys do and the things that you do for the community. So I'm really excited. So I hope I get to stick to the questions and the process as opposed to just geeking out on this stuff. So anyway, so let's just go ahead and get started. Tell us about Garrett. Tell me about you.
yeah, so backgrounds in engineering. So I got a degree in biomedical engineering. So I've always been interested in science, math, and kind of worked new product development in medical devices for about 20 years. So kind of started out way deep in the weeds, more electrical engineering, systems engineering, even kind of basic design. So really technical, got a little more into project management, program management, and kind of systems engineering as well. So looking a little more holistically at the system.
Right.
Did that for the longest time. And it's funny how I actually got into products here. It wasn't really by choice or even something I really knew about. The company I was working for at the time kind of had a security researcher present something to the company. We're going to present something at a conference.
Right.
There were concerns. They decided they needed to kind of holistically have a product security program across all business units. And I got an email from a VP I never knew. Just said, hey, you're going to be starting this program. I said, cool. What is that?
Voluntold.
Yeah.
Some version of that. Yeah, I get that.
I was doing systems engineering. So it's like I was doing a lot of the security architecture and other things. So I was kind of in that, and I was working with a lot of great software and other engineers that were doing good security work. It just wasn't normalized. So but it was fun because it was a larger company, so lots of different business units, and some groups were very much involved in this. So I got to kind of collaborate with them, learn from them. So it was a great way to kind of just get in, and it kind of kicked off my career in this space, and been in this now, probably 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So
It's okay.
It's exciting to see how it's evolved from, more so ad hoc, just good engineering work, to very formalized. You've got regulatory bodies and others that they got teeth now, and they are enforcing it and for the betterment of everybody. But it's a great industry to be in, and just exciting.
And that's kind of how security has grown up. I mean, you go back 25 years or 30 years, security back then was maybe a firewall. You just kind of threw whatever ad hoc process you had to protect your systems. And then we started getting into some frameworks and then some regulatory requirements. And now we have standards of, okay, this is how we're going to do this. This is why we're going to do it. So I get that. What were some of the things you did very early on? Before you get into this, before you got into the security side, what were some of the stuff you worked on?
Yes, I think the big thing with medical device development in general, it's all risk-based. It's obviously safety and efficacy are the two most important things for medical devices. On the safety side, that's where security really comes in.
Right.
But also on the efficacy, because security has to be usable.
Sure.
So it's very different from your standard IT, where you can have complex passwords and things that you just force across the board. Nobody asks questions.
Right.
The medical device environment, you really have to understand how the device is used and who may need access to it in an emergency or various situations. So you do take a risk-based approach. So when you design things, you always want to reduce risk as much as possible.
Sure.
But you always have to accept things in a medical device.
Right.
So when they're doing these type of things, so really one of the first things starting out with is kind of that security risk management. Tying the security into your safety risk management, you're taking an approach of looking at, as you're trying to reduce risk, what can you do in the system? What makes sense? And then kind of evolving from there. And there's some processes around that help your early architecture, like threat modeling. Paper analysis, just really looking at the architecture of the system, kind of building security as early as possible. That was always the challenge. What happened when security became, a bigger need in the industry is how do you bolt it on? and really hard to do for legacy devices. And you've got
You inject it in the end as opposed to put it in the beginning. Yeah.
there's medical devices that have been out there that get used for 20, 30 years.
Right.
So to be able to, to move to these newer systems, it's hard for hospitals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
And I've got some hospitals that I do some BCSO work for, and we find stuff all the time. I mean, it's a major investment for some of these things.
Yep.
And their control systems or the monitoring systems, whatever it may be, we're talking millions of dollars. And it's really hard to just go, oh, well, it's out of date, ka-chunk, and now we have something new. So I get that. For the audience, can you talk about, when we talk about medical device, what does that mean? What is it that we're really talking about? Give me some examples, or how does the audience need to think about medical devices, the term medical device?
yes. So it is very broad.
Yeah.
You've got, anything from, if you're diabetic, you've got, continuous glucose monitors, you've got, implantable medical devices for, cardiac and, neural conditions. You've got, your big capital equipment at hospitals, your scanners, your and your infusion pumps, and I mean, name it. There's so many cool technologies coming out today too. Just, a lot of great startups, a lot of cool ideas.
Right.
And obviously with AI too in the forefront, like it's the amount of devices that are evolving quickly.
Which is a little scary for me as a CISO, trying to figure out, okay, where does my security paranoia come in to protect current systems? And now we have some new systems with new technology. It's like, oh God, now I got to protect that too. So at least on my side, it could be really scary sometimes.
Yeah. So to that point of worrying about it, really, when you look at securing a medical device, it's very holistic, and there's a lot of things you should be doing.
Right.
From early architecture, through, as you're coding, using secure coding standards,
Right.
using tools like your static and dynamic analysis tools, and then moving on to penetration testing to ensure, like, taking an adversarial approach, like how would somebody attack your devices? Right. As a developer and a designer, it's always you develop the system to do X,
Right.
and you test that it can do X. But
Sure.
sometimes it's capable of doing different things that an adversary can take advantage of.
And that's what a pen tester wants to do. Like, oh, can I do
Yeah.
Z and A and C and M? And
Yeah, people always ask, is penetration testing like verification testing? Because, in systems engineering or medical device, you have requirements. The system shall do X. You write a test to verify that it does X. And I said, no, penetration testing is the system shall not. And as a former systems engineer, I would cringe if anyone wrote a requirement like that. Well, it's that negative space. It's an implement test space. So really, when you go after and look for a good pen tester, it's someone that's got a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Someone who knows how to do those things that you just be like, wow, I didn't think it could do that, or or anyone could do that or would do that to a system.
Right. and this is a specialized skill set. This isn't just, and I work with pen testers all the time. We have some really fantastic pen testers. But even this is a specialized set of skills to do pen testing on these. Is that because it's unique hardware and software, or is it because the requirements are so specific, whether it be a framework or regulation or whatever? Why do you think that there really is that necessity to have that specialized skill set?
I think if you look at, security as kind of an emergent property of a system. So now as you've got the more complex the system, the more understanding someone needs of how everything interacts and can be utilized. So you've got, if it's a pen tester, if you've got a network pen tester, they know network pen testing. They do a phenomenal job, your IT enterprise. When you start getting these complex medical devices, you now have a network, a mobile device. You've got various sometimes web portals. You've got embedded systems. You got all sorts of RF technologies. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, sometimes very custom protocols. You've got mixed band med radio. So there's so many different ways and so much attack surface for someone to be able to utilize and just chain those things together. But there's also manufacturing tools. I mean, some of these systems have intentional ways of, updating or doing things and software updatability is a huge attack vector. That's something that is not always done well.
Well, we haven't been able to figure that out on the other sides as well. I mean, the patch management as a patch management thing, but also that supply chain attack of getting in there on those patches and doing something and sending it to the systems or the device in this case.
Yeah, well, patching is a huge issue too, because as a medical device, even if you change one line of code, you still have to verify the system and intend that it's safe and efficacious. Right? That it's still there. So it's a huge challenge. You can't just be patching weekly. Right. Just cost prohibitive.
Sure.
So you do have to be careful with that. And it goes back to that risk management. Right. As you find vulnerabilities, you run it through risk management. Is it acceptable? And if it is acceptable, you do want to figure out how to fix it eventually, because lots of little things could end up whole nother attack vector later on. Individually, they're not.
Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about attack vectors, are you usually getting these devices, let's say, at a point before they get out into the public space, out into like the hospitals, or are you getting it from the hospitals for verification? Kind of talk to us a little bit about that timing.
Typically, it's driven from the manufacturer side.
Okay.
Hospitals, I think, would love to do it. Sure. But it just costs prohibitive.
Right.
And you do not want to pen test a device and put it back in service.
Really
becomes, it's not in a known state.
Right.
So you wouldn't do that. So typically, manufacturers find a pen test.
That makes sense.
And then send devices out and isolate. But there's another unique challenge with that is really the FDA is looking for full system tests. So when you set up your isolated test, you want to make it as real as possible.
Sure.
So even things like talking to a PAC system, and just those type of things like, sending .com messages or other things that you really want to have the holistic approach, because they want to be able to utilize any of those things that are in a normal system as could be used in an adversarial way.
Right. So you mentioned the FDA. Is that who generally either sets the guidelines or the frameworks or the requirements for the types of testings that gets done on these devices?
Yeah, so the FDA has a pretty strong, they've got the guidance out there that is pretty clear what they expect to do.
Okay.
They usually don't go too far into the how.
Okay. All right.
They do say they want you to do your penetration testing and other security testing and things as well. They do call it out in the guidance that's out there. But there's a little bit of the expertise. You have to find someone with the right expertise that's capable of doing it.
Right.
And they do want that, like in reports, you should be explaining, why your testers have the right expertise.
That makes sense. Again, specialized skill sets. You want someone who really knows that holistic approach of looking at all the parts and be able to test them appropriately.
Yeah, and they want to make sure too you're independent. And this is a standard practice in medical device. Like if I design something, I shouldn't be the one testing that.
Sure.
Right. So having that independence to truly be able to test it well.
Well, and that makes sense. I mean, that's really kind of the pen testing goal anyway, because you have IT people and IT system administrators who have built the systems. You want to have a third party come in and check it and verify. Now, in terms of this, I mean, again, we're talking about specific skill sets and expertise, and especially if the FDA is requiring to have those sorts of expertise, at least from we trust that these people do this well, as opposed to, I mean, I could get it and test it and play with it and poke at it, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a CISO. I do policies and procedures and all of that fun stuff. So I get that. I get that why that would be necessary. How often does when we're talking about frameworks or standards, how often do those change? And I guess the real question on that is, I know how often stuff changes at hospitals, and not very often, but there's new stuff coming out all the time, new technologies and new code.
Yeah, there's new capabilities, there's new vulnerabilities always being discovered. So there is an expectation, and some of it again back to that risk-based approach to how risky the device is. But general rule of thumb is annual pen tests are probably a good idea. Maybe more frequently if you've got a higher risk profile or
if it's changing a lot.
And anytime you make an update to the system, you're definitely going to want to, if you add features, other things, do changes, it's just a good best practice.
Right.
I mean, you can always justify maybe not needing to do it if you didn't touch certain things, but still in general, on an annual basis is a good rule of thumb.
Well, and the attack tools change. So, I mean, it may be that last year we did X, Y, and Z testing. And this year I have this new tool that I can scan at a different spectrum and do this and do that. So, I mean, I could definitely see it on both sides. Either the product has changed or the tool set has changed to test the product.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what kind of you brought up earlier is like when I think even in the life cycle you mentioned, like, do you do this testing?
Right.
Typically, like you mentioned, if hospitals have things are on the market already, obviously even then they should be still tested. But typically you do want to do it as early as possible, even in development, because you don't want to be surprised at the end. Now, you want it to be close to
Whoops. She
production.
didn't know it did that.
Yeah. So it is. Yeah, it's very good to do preliminary pen tests or even partial pen tests early on, because again, like I said, it's the people that built it just have a different mentality than the people that break it.
Yeah.
So there's not necessarily a crossover there. Just it's you just want it to work. You're not thinking about.
Well, and it's that same thing of why would they do that?
Mhm.
I mean, that I hear that question all the time from my clients of why would they try that?
Yeah, because they can. They want to.
Exactly.
It's fun for them.
Yeah. Can we make these lights do something different? Let's try it. We were doing that on it was a piece of hardware. I won't go into what the hardware was, but it was, can we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Serve no purpose, but could we? And that was the intent. It was, can I get to whatever system to change this thing? Well, if I can get to it, well, then maybe I can do even like changing lights. That is something Stuxnet sort of was, just changing a readout or changing an alert light or something like that can really throw a system off or throw a person off who's looking at that system. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's all completely valuable, but I'm a CISO, so that's what I try to do. Okay. So you were talking about risk and talking about like criticality. What are some things that you have seen in the past of like really critical device? Like, what are the most critical devices you've ever seen? Whether you worked on them or you just see them out in the world, what are some of those things that you look at and go, yeah, that one would be, that's important.
I think historically, even a bit in the news in the past 10 plus years, infusion pumps have always kind of got a little bit of a target on the back, and they're very serious. They're some kind of network or outbound facing, and it's.
I mean, they try to make them convenient and easy to manage and do stuff, but the moment you do that, you open up that attack vector. Okay. Yeah, it's really scary thinking about all those bits and pieces of trying to make sure something works. I've got a friend who, her son-in-law, for a long time worked with a company that does implants like hip and knee and stuff. And he was a sales guy, but he was in the operating room with them when they were installing it. And the whole intent was to make sure that it fit and it was the right one and that it went in correctly and there was no problems, because it falls back onto the company if something went wrong. And he used to tell me all kinds of stories about that of, hip sockets, and they put in, they weren't the right size and they weren't this, and that was a lump of metal. There wasn't network connectivity on these things. There wasn't Bluetooth or wireless or any other sort of RF, communications. I can't imagine all the stuff that you can do nowadays with the new technologies for these different things that people are using.
Yeah. Oh, just look at homes nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Fridges, everything. Like it just.
Yeah. We had briefly talked about getting some of these home devices at our next conference and hack them for one of the classes. And we were doing it because it was going to be fun. But then we started thinking about it as like, we're going to have to rent the device. Then we would hack it, and then we got to give it back to them. Let's not do that. So we've got a whole different plan, which will be a surprise if you guys come out to B-Sides this year. We're hoping to have some cool surprises on some fun stuff. Speaking of that, I think you're going to be at B-Sides this year, aren't you?
Maybe. Right?
Maybe? Okay.
Not sure about that yet.
Yeah, all right. Well, I hope you are. Have you ever been to B-Sides? So B-Sides, we have two core or cornerstone conferences here in Oakland. We have dozens of conferences, but the two big ones are B-Sides up in Tulsa and then IWS down here in Oklahoma City. And they're both cheap or free. It's those anchor conferences. It's kind of, we get 400 to 600 people at each one. And it's, the community goes all the way from Dallas, Kansas City comes to them. And it's a good turnout. We always have fun. and it's a community one, so it's cybersecurity
Mhm.
and those technical people. It's just we get together and have fun. You get some other conferences. We got some conferences like Innotech and things like that, and they're bigger. Certainly, they've got more speakers and stuff. More they bring in different kinds of vendors. We get more IT people, maybe less security people, but the IWS and the B-Sides are those two core cybersecurity conferences here in Oklahoma. And B-Sides is B-Sides. If you've been to any B-Sides, they're always a lot of fun, and that's, kind of where that is. Anyway, I'll get off the course.
That's real cool. You mentioned kind of a sense of community there. The word kind of came up when you said that.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes me think of a very unique thing with the medical device security side of things. Like if you look at medical devices companies in general, they compete for products. They wouldn't talk.
Yeah.
But in the security space, it was the thought process early on was, if one company has a breach or a vulnerability, all the companies are harmed because doctors, hospitals are going to be asking, oh, show me why your product isn't vulnerable.
Right.
So these companies came together and were working together. So there's lots of great working groups out there that actually people are working together and forming like, how do you do things? How do we do things better? So it's really interesting. It's a very unique aspect of that normally those, even sometimes big medical device companies don't communicate within divisions, yet alone amongst competitors.
Corporate people don't talk to corporate people? No. Well, okay. Well, so that's a really good question. This is a specialized skill set. How many people are doing this? There's probably not a whole lot out there in the world.
Yeah, there's obviously, you've got obviously a dozen or so big companies. But,
Sure.
There's thousands of medical device companies.
Oh yeah,
Lots of small
absolutely.
companies and stuff. And
Who's doing the pen testing side? Who's doing that side? Like what DR Labs is doing?
There's and that's part of the reason I think why we're creating this company is there is a huge need. Like we talked about the need for annual pen tests, more pen tests, or the appropriate breadth and depth of testing.
Yeah.
That skill set. So there's a huge need there because I know some of the manufacturers have used different vendors and have had challenges.
Sure.
Because you may get someone that is more of kind of an IT-centered person, really doesn't understand the product side of things, the device hardware, or just the complex side of things. So there's definitely a strong need, and I think that's a gap we can definitely fill.
Yeah.
And it is more than just medical devices as well. Though you look at IT, OT, this other spaces, there's a ton of opportunity out there that I think we're definitely going to kind of fill that need if.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about, Donovan, the CEO. We, this for as long as I've known him, it's going on a long time now. And I've been here for 3.25 years, whatever it is. But he's always about supporting that community, always about providing that security back to our clients and our customers. And I think this was one of those things that he definitely saw a need. And there's definitely concern because, when we're talking about what happens when we fail, when we don't test it correctly, when we don't find problems, that's huge, and that's not something we want to deal with. We want to make sure we do we do what we can. From, my side, I'm the CISO side. So I'm looking at helping organizations build those controls, put that secure software development lifecycle in, all these things before we get to the pen test. And hopefully the pen test, maybe they find something that's like, okay, great. That's a problem. Let me go fix it over here. I'll fix the problem here in the system. That way the end result is more secure. But all of us that's what we're here for. We're helping the community, we're helping our customers, we're helping our clients. So I think DR Labs is coming in and doing that for that. I don't even want to say it's a niche because while it may be a niche, because there's only a small community doing it, huge impact. So that's really, to me, that's really fascinating, because again, we do pen testing, but we don't do that part.
Yeah, no, just hearing those stories and the patients and just the lives that are improved and major manufacturer I used to work for, they'd bring in, customers all the time, especially during the holidays and stuff, and just tell their stories. It really helps those late nights, those extra weekends, maybe you put in occasionally, it makes it just, seem all worth it. And it's just awesome.
Wait, not everyone does that? They don't work on the weekends? Huh. Well,
Sorry, I didn't mean to, push your bubble there.
somebody was asking me the other day, they sent me a chat. It was, I guess, on Saturday or something. And they're like, your team's is always green. I was like, yeah, kind of. I was doing something. I was trying to get it done.
Yeah.
And they just laughed at me.
Back to challenges of the connected world, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, this is great. I'm really excited. First of all, I love the fact that you guys are here with us. I've met the whole team, and it's going to be a lot of fun. At least I feel like it's going to be a lot of fun. You guys do too. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited the stuff that you guys are going to be doing. And we're certainly going to get more detailed, as we otherwise work through the podcast and do different things. I'll certainly have you back on, and we can talk more about maybe some of the tactics, maybe some of the pieces. We'll get Sean and some other people in, and maybe have a big, thing on it. But I think this is going to be fun. I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah, we're just getting started. I'm having fun already. So
Yes, yeah, good.
good to be here. Good to be part of the team.
Yeah, this is. I think you're going to enjoy it. We have a lot of fun. I mean, you've seen our office, you've seen our podcast room now. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Garrett. Really appreciate it. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. Of bringing Garrett in DR Labs, Device Recon Labs, DR Labs. That's how that's how the brain says it. We're glad to have them, and this is going to be something I think for the community is going to be fantastic. So thanks for joining us at this episode of Secure AF Podcast. We've got the next couple of episodes planned where we're going to be talking to the other members of the team and a few other surprises coming up. So make sure you join us on the podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
The Secure AF Podcast is a production of Alias Cybersecurity. Visit us online at aliascybersecurity.com. All rights reserved.